Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and More Wild. And with Title Update 3, we've now finally had the drop of our next Arch-Tempered monster. Of course, it's new Udra, and with it, we have some strong pieces of gear introduced. Looking at the AT helmet and chest specifically, we're looking at 3 levels of burst on one piece with a pile of 1 slots, or even crazier, the 2 3-slot decorations, and then 2 levels of your meta-relevant skill, Counter-Strike. So just those 2 pieces stand out pretty hard in regards to power creep and that feeling, which is interesting because, you know, in the world of Wilds, where they've been so careful about this kind of straight number increase, we're seeing some of it here. Now, naturally, this has an impact on our meta sets for longsword and has resulted in a pretty noticeable increase of effective roll. So yeah, that means at the highest level with the best sets involving the most RNG talismans, but also at the lower end, where, you know, you got sets anyone can make with a crafted talisman. It's impactful on both sides. Yes, there is a set bonus here, you know, bad blood, definitely not relevant for us, unfortunately, it's just quite weak. But being able to slot in one of these super strong pieces, then have that help us reach the 3 set bonus for a gamma set, you know, guts tenacity, that is fantastic. So we got lots to cover today, but as usual, I need to give Josh his deserved credit. So thank you to Josh for putting in the work to understand the talismans and the data mining from that. Shout out and thank you to the data miner that did all that for the RNG talismans, DTL Nor. But credit should go to Josh, of course, for doing the math and coming to the conclusions on the sets that we're looking at today. I play the longsword and can talk things through with him, but he's the veteran that comes to these conclusions. I'm presenting it. With that said then, let's begin. First up, let's talk about weapons. Nothing has really changed here in regards to the best thing you can possibly do, which is basically craft your weapon with an attack focus, the 1 sharpness, and then the relevant element without any investment into it, and you match that for the target. That's the ideal thing you can do. So for Arch-Tempered New Udra, the obvious example is its water weakness, so we have exactly that on this weapon, and here are the production bonus and reinforcement bonuses, all attack with the 1 sharpness. Otherwise, if you're just going for a raw setup, you don't want to match the element, fair enough, maybe you don't have the perfect Artian, then you could go something like Blast or Paralysis, whatever you prefer, ignore the elements, run the same longsword for every hunt, and be fine, but get slightly less output because of it. But it is the same setup either way, you just have Paralysis on it instead of the element. In regards to the offensive decorations you run then, it's the same as before, the 5 out of 5 critical boost in the first 2 decoration slots, and in the final one, the 4 razor sharp, and if you can get a bonus level that's relevant, that's great. The best one here will be handicraft, but of course there are other options that could be useful to you if you don't have this perfect roll. So we begin with the God Roll Talisman situation with latent power involved for max output. That requires Ray Gamma for your helmet, the new Udra Gamma for your chest piece, Seragios gloves in beta, the Gamma waist for Ray Dow, and lastly, the Bale boots. We match this with a ridiculous talisman. You want one with 3 attack, and then you've got that 1 offensive slot to put an attack boost. This allows you to reach the % increase for overall attack. Then you have a second skill with just 1 level on it. For this setup, that could be either 1 agitator or 1 burst. Then you swap the decorations based on whichever it is you have on your talisman. I have burst. Alongside that then, we need 2 1 slots to allow us to actually fit quick sheath in the build, which obviously you want. So this is the most RNG dependent hefty talisman that we're going to talk about today. And again, we're going to scale it down with other sets. They're going to lose some effective raw, but not fall that far behind. That will be easier than this. On that note then, we use these decorations to achieve this skill list. With full latent power, 3 agitator, the full Counter-Strike max might, obviously the quick sheath, we have 2 adrenaline rush, the 1 weakness exploit, 1 level of resentment, which is certainly nice to have but won't be that relevant, the 1 burst, 1 stamina surge, we got the 2 of Ray Dow to increase the duration of latent power. And importantly, it obviously has 3 pieces of Gamma, giving us Lord Soul for that % damage bonus from Guts Tenacity. Let's look at the math then to show that this is the highest effective raw set we have. So it starts at 225 base raw. Multiply that by 7% from the 4 attack and Guts Tenacity, bringing us to 240.75. Then we have all these flat numbers, including Agitator 3 with the assumed 65% uptime, bringing us to 304.75. Multiply that by 32% from Y sharpness, bringing us to 402.27. Now we have 81% reliable affinity from maximum might with this exploit, the base Artian. The 3 agitators with assumed 65% uptime, and Latent 5 with assumed 50% uptime for the hunt. We have the 5 crit boost, that's a 40% damage increase 81% of the time, so it's more like a 32.4% average damage increase. Multiply that by a last number, and that brings you to the hefty 533 effective raw. So it's a fantastic update for the meta set. All thanks to one specific piece, the arch-tempered New Udra chest piece. But now it's time to talk about something pretty interesting here. An alternative max DPS set that leans, instead of attack boost, more on critical eye. It results in higher effective roll, but there is some overcapping affinity potential here, just with more smooth affinity curves and peaks, especially regarding latent powers ups and downs. The point of this set is really to be an alternative option for a god roll. So if you don't have the first set in the god roll we just covered and the options there, this could be an alternative. So let's take a look. We have the Ray Gamma helmet, the New Udra Gamma chest piece. We have the Seragios gloves in beta. We have the Gamma waist from Ray, and then the Bale boots again there. This time for the talisman, we're going for a critical eye focus instead. So it's got 3 critical eye on it, and then the one slot that we have, we put in one more offensive slot for critical eye to get the 4 levels of it for 16% affinity total. Then that second level, the burst, that could instead be Agitator 1, but it's either Agitator 1 or Burst 1. Plus you need 2 more slots to actually fit in the quick sheath to have those levels, which we absolutely want. So again, god roll, just a different kind. Let's look at the math to see how this compares. 225 base roll, 5% increased attack power from the guts, tenacity, bring us to 236.25. Add these flat numbers, including the assumed uptime of 65% for Agitator 3, and that brings us to 292.25. Multiply that by 32% from white sharpness, and you got 385.77. Then we have the incredible 97 reliable affinity, which it could go a bit higher than depending on the situation. This is from the maximum eye, the weakness exploit 1, the base Artian, Agitator 3 with its uptime, Latent 5 with its assumed 50% uptime, and then of course the 4 critical eye. Then with the 5 crit boost, that's a 40% damage increase, 97% of the time. So it's more like a 38.8% average damage increase. Multiply that by a last number, and that brings you to the highest of 535 effective roll. It's 2 more effective roll by comparison than the other max DPS set, technically the highest. But again, you're in danger of having periods of overcapping affinity here. You will have smoother affinity curve peaks and valleys compared to the first set, but what this gives you again is 2 different god roll setups that will both work super competitively. So you pick the one that you can actually access if you can. But now let's talk about the no latent power set as a focus. Latent power obviously provides rising and falling periods of power, which is incredible during a run where you're doing well and actually not carting. People still don't like their power to sometimes be high and sometimes be low at specific moments. So we covered that as an alternative option here. This is an RNG hefty version, we have a comfier version in a moment. So for this set we have the Ray Gamma helmet. Once again we have the arch-tempered New Udra Gamma and the chest piece. Then we have the Ray Gamma gloves here, and then the Legiacris 2-piece, both in beta for the waist and legs. For this set, we have a talisman that's a bit more forgiving than the last one, but still pretty demanding. 3 attack boosts and then the 1 offensive slot, again to give you that 1 more attack boost to reach the percent bonus. Then we have 1 level of a different skill, and at least one slot to work in the potential for quick sheath. In this case then, it's a bit more flexible. I've got 1 agitator here, but you could instead run 1 weakness exploit, 1 adrenaline rush, 1 burst. And then you change the decorations in the gear based on whatever you swapped. In fact, you know, the attack boost, the 3 out of 3 attack boost, could be something like crit eye. So there's a bit more variation potential here. But you do need that extra 1 slot again for the quick sheath slot. So using these decorations, I achieve this skill list. The full weakness exploit, the 3 agitator, the full counter-strike max might quick sheath obviously. We do benefit from 2 evade extender, which is nice. The 1 adrenaline rush, latent power, burst, and stamina surge. Again, it's not a latent power set, we just have 1. And this gives us the 2-piece of the Raid Owl set for increased latent power duration for that 1 latent power. But obviously we're also getting the important 2-piece of Legiacris for the Azure Bolt, bit of the thunder damage. And obviously we're also getting Lord Soul for the percent attack power increase. So let's take a look at the math by comparison. With much less of a focus on latent power, we have less effective raw, but not by much. We have 225 raw, 7% increase to that thanks to guts and attack 4, brings us to 240.75. We have all these flat increases, including Agitator 3 with the assumed 65% uptime, bringing us to 299.75. Multiply that by 32%, thanks to white sharpness, and that brings us to 395.67. Then we have the 82% reliable affinity from our weakness exploit max might, the base Artian. We have Latent 1 with a 66% assumed uptime, Legiacris 2 with a 40% assumed uptime, and Agitator 3 with a 65% assumed uptime. So 82% reliable affinity, boosted by 5 crit boost, That's a 40% damage increase, but 82% of the time, so more like an average of 32.8% damage increase. Multiply that by our last number, and that brings us to 526 effective roll, which is 7 less effective roll than the Latent Power set. So if you're not a fan of Latent Power, that's not bad at all. And we'll have consistent DPS by comparison. So I could see a casual player preferring this. But obviously, maybe you don't like Latent Power, but also we need less of a god roll and more of a comfy set that opens up other opportunities, especially in regards to Arch-Tempered New Udra. So you can see here that in this set, we've actually got 3 1 slots available for whatever you like, and we'll discuss that in a moment. And importantly, we have a much less perfect talisman here. So it's Ray Gamma for the helmet, Arch-Tempered Gamma for the chest piece, we have New Udra Gamma for the chest piece, then we have the Glygaicrus 2-piece in beta, this time for the gloves and waist. Then we finish off the whole Gamma concept with Duna legs once again, giving us that 3-piece for guts. And then the build comes together with the easier talisman. So here we have the attack boost once again, with the 1 offensive slot going to attack boost to get the percent increase. And then we have a bonus level of something. I have Weakness Exploit here. It could be Agitator, it could be Adrenaline Rush, it could be Burst. You swap whatever it is around. You could actually, instead of having 3 attack boosts on your talisman, have like 3 Razor Sharp. And then you take the Razor Sharp out of the weapon and put attack boost in instead. You rebalance it whatever you need to. But the goal is to achieve the same or close to the same skill list, right? So here are the offensive decorations I'm using to achieve this skill list. Full Weakness Exploit, 3 Agitator, full Counter-Strike, Max Might, bit of Stamina Surge, which is nice, obviously the Quick Sheath, 1 Adrenaline Rush, and 1 Burst. Then we have our set bonuses of 2-piece of Glygaicrus, and of course, Guts Tenacity. This leaves you with no latent power at all, and results in slightly less effective roll, but it's definitely more of an accessible option because you don't need the 1 slots on your talisman. And again, you can really work this around, like having the attack boost in your weapon instead of Razor Sharp, and having Razor Sharp on your talisman, that kind of thing. So I think this is an approachable, strong option. For the 1 slots that are free here then, you could slot in whatever is relevant to you. You could go 3 out of 3 Divine Blessing for defense. You could go Constitution to help you maintain maximum might and in general have the stamina. Maybe you're doing Arch-Tempered New Udra and you want Adaptability level 2, maybe even slot in 1 Fire Res or a Divine Blessing. These slots are open to you, making this set a lot more comfy for that reason. But that brings us to our last set to cover, which is really covering our bases and providing you a set that's not only going to kick ass, but requires no RNG talisman. This is really strong, as the math is going to show you. Like, not that far from the RNG stuff, really. It will definitely be a very strong starting point if you don't have good RNG drops yet and just want to ignore all that, or just want to try Longsword out. So with that in mind, we have the Ray Gamma helmet, the New Udra Gamma chest, Omega gloves, the Ray Gamma waist, and then the Gamma legs from Duna. The no RNG talisman here is the Power Charm, which gives you 3 levels of latent power. We use these decorations, and you see I've got some empty slots there, to achieve this skill list, which is full Agitator, Latent Power, the full Counter-Strike, Max Might, obviously importantly Quick Sheath, you got the 1 Adrenaline Rush, the 1 Weakness Exploit, the 1 Burst, and we even have a random Divine Blessing built in, which is really nice. And 1 Stamina Surge. Obviously we've got 2-piece of Ray to increase the duration of the Latent Power we have, and Guts Tenacity with 4 pieces instead of 3, but yeah. Now these 2 1 slots are up to you. What do you want to put in them? It could be Adaptability because you're going for Arch-Tempered New Udra. It could be just 2 levels of Constitution to help you with maintaining maximum might. Or you could finish off Divine Blessing, use these 2 slots to get 3 out of 3. But when we look at the math, you realize how good this is. So we start with 225 base roll, multiply that by 5% thanks to just Guts Tenacity. Brings us to 236.25. We get a flat increase from all these numbers, including Agitator 5 with 65% assumed uptime, bringing us to 292.25. Multiply that by 32% thanks to White Sharpness, bringing us to 385.77. And then we have the reliable 86% affinity from all of these sources, including Agitator 5 and Latent 5 with their assumed uptime. With this setup, we have 5 crit boost. That's a 40% damage increase, but 86% of the time. So it's more like an average of 34.4% damage increase. Multiply that by last number, and that brings you to the very respectable 519 effective roll. So our top sets are like 533 or 535 effective roll. This is not far behind it with no RNG at all. And before this, with Title Update 3, our last no RNG set was 503 effective roll. So it's a massive 16 effective roll jump with no RNG involved. Thank you, 18 Udra. Pretty fantastic. But yeah, there you have it. That's our overview of the longsword builds thanks to the 18 new Udra update. Pretty blatant power creep really when you're looking at the helmet and chest in particular, with the levels of the skills, the incredible slots. But, you know, with the potency of things like Legaicrus 2-piece, Guts Tenacity, these enforce similar setups despite that, but at least for now, the new Udra chest piece has really found its way into many builds, not just longsword, but many builds in general. But it's obviously a good update for the meta in regards to just one 18 monster having such impact. But otherwise, I hope this was useful. If it was, do drop a like. And until next time, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thank you for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.